You know, usually when we lock our front doors at night, there's this expectation of absolute boundary.
Right, yeah.
It's like a fortress mentality that we all just silently agree upon, you know?
Yeah.
You turn that deadbolt, you hear that heavy metal click, and you just instinctively know, like, I am safe in here. The outside is out there.
It's a completely foundational piece of human psychology. We build our entire sense of security, and really our entire societal structure, on the idea that our home is an impenetrable sanctuary.
Exactly.
The locked door is, well, it's the ultimate symbol of autonomy.
But then you step into the world of high strangeness and paranormal encounters, and suddenly that deadbolt means absolutely nothing.
Yeah, the rules change entirely.
They really do, because we're looking at a phenomenon today that doesn't just bypass the lock. It stands on your porch.
Yeah.
And demands that you open the door yourself. And the scariest part...
People actually do it.
They do. It's wild. We are exploring a deeply unsettling, frankly terrifying corner of the unknown today, pulling from a massive stack of sources, but we're primarily centering around the deep dive into Nick Redfern's book, Women in Black.
Right, the creepy companions of the mysterious MIB.
Yes, so welcome to the deep dive. We are so glad you are here with us for this one.
You know, when you hear the phrase Men in Black, or MIB, an entire pop culture image immediately comes to mind.
Oh, totally. Will Smith, Tommy Lee Jones.
Exactly. You think of slick suits, government conspiracies, flashy memory-erasing gadgets. The MIB have dominated the cultural zeitgeist in the UFO literature for decades now.
They're almost a comforting trope at this point.
They are. But the historical cases we're analyzing today systematically isolate and define their female counterparts. And what becomes immediately clear is that the women in black to the YB are not just some secondary appendage to the MIB mythos.
Right, because I always pictured them as just, gender swap sidekicks.
Well, they're just carrying the briefcases.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe showing up to hand the men in black a manila folder or, drive the sedan. But diving into these historical accounts, that completely falls apart.
It really does.
These entities are entirely distinct, they are highly predatory, and they operate with their own unique, incredibly sinister psychological warfare tactics.
Exactly. The goal of this deep dive is to really synthesize decades of historical cases, ontological theories, and these wild transcultural connections so you can fully grasp the mechanics of this phenomenon.
Without having to read thousands of pages of FOIA requests.
Right. We want to cut through the endless, often contradictory UFO literature out there and look at the raw data of these encounters. We're going to look at a meticulous taxonomy of these entities.
It's almost like a biologist classifying a new, highly dangerous species.
That's a great way to look at it, yeah.
Okay, let's unpack this. Before we can even begin to understand what these women in black actually want or, where they come from, we have to understand exactly what they look like.
And that alone is terrifying.
It really is, because reading through these encounter reports, their appearance alone is a psychological weapon. It's the baseline of the nightmare.
Right.
It's not just a disguise, it's an assault on the senses.
The physical morphology is incredibly consistent across reports spanning decades. We are looking at a very specific archetype here.
So what are the common denominators?
Well, these entities are almost exclusively described as being garbed entirely in black. Long dresses, heavy coats, sometimes scarves wrapped tightly.
But it's not stylish.
No, not at all. And physically, they possess an unnervingly pale, completely bloodless complexion. And perhaps most disturbingly, they exhibit a profound, chilling lack of emotional resonance.
I struggle to wrap my head around that specific detail. A lack of emotion is one thing. We've all met people who are stoic.
Right, but this is different.
Yeah, witnesses describe it as an absence of humanity that really gets under your skin, like staring into a void. And there's something fascinating about the clothing itself.
The sartorial aspect is key.
It's not just that they are wearing dark clothes. It's that the clothing is slightly, wrong.
Exactly.
It's often a way that the human brain immediately flags as dangerous.
It's an anomaly of texture and cut. The garments are frequently described by witnesses as approximations of human clothing.
Like they read about clothes but had never seen them.
Something like that. They might look like a 1950s wool coat, but the fabric doesn't fold correctly, or it has a sheen that wool simply doesn't have.
Oh, that's so creepy.
They might look brand new, yet completely out of style, or the stitching makes no logical sense for a functional garment.
You know what it makes me think of? It's exactly like early AI-generated art.
Oh, it's a perfect comparison.
Right. When you first glance at an AI image of a person, your brain says, okay, that's a human in a suit. But then you look closer.
And you see the extra fingers.
Exactly. You realize the lapel merges into the necktie, the fabric texture looks like molded plastic, and the buttons are just like fused into the fabric.
Yes.
It looks human at a glance, but upon closer inspection, the details are fundamentally, bizarrely flawed.
What's fascinating here is how this exact physical dissonance induces the uncanny valley effect in the witnesses.
And the uncanny valley is basically that psychological revulsion we feel, right?
Exactly. It's that visceral disgust when something looks almost, but not quite human. Our brains are hardwired by evolutionary biology to detect subtle deviations in human appearance.
Like to spot sickness.
Precisely. We evolved this trait to protect ourselves from disease or to recognize corpses so we avoid pathogens. So when a witness looks at the clothing of a woman in black, that sartorial mimicry falters.
Their brains start screaming, danger.
Yes. The entity is attempting to seamlessly integrate into human society, into our cultural baseline, and it is failing at a microscopic level.
It's a superficial camouflage. Just imagine you were standing on your porch and you realize the fabric of the dress the person in front of you is wearing doesn't move with the wind.
It would be paralyzing.
Or the cut of the coat makes no logical sense for how human shoulders actually work. It triggers this profound subconscious realization like, I'm facing a non-human presence.
It induces absolute ontological shock.
Ontological shock, yeah. You realize the thing standing in front of you lacks the fundamental biological or manufacturing understanding to even fake wearing a coat correctly.
And that physical wrongness extends significantly to their extreme pallor.
The pale skin.
Right. The bloodless complexion isn't just a dramatic aesthetic detail, it's an indicator. It suggests a non-biological, artificial, or perhaps even reanimated origin.
Reanimated, like a corpse.
Exactly. When you combine skin that looks like wax or parchment with eyes that are often described as unusually large, dark, or simply dead, it immediately taps into those deep-seated human associations with death.
Which leads perfectly into a parallel that kept coming up in the source material, which I found completely terrifying.
The vampire connection.
Yes. There is a sustained, explicit parallel between the women in black and the vampires of ancient European folklore. I initially brushed it off as just spooky atmosphere.
A lot of people do.
But the tactical similarities are impossible to ignore.
The connection goes far beyond just wearing black and having pale skin. The reports consistently point out their strict adherence to nocturnal operations.
They only come out at night.
The women in black exhibit an overwhelming preference for conducting their hunting, their intimidation, and their silencing operations almost exclusively under the cover of night.
And I realize it's not just because nighttime is spooky, you know. This isn't a theatrical choice by these entities. It's a tactical necessity.
Precisely. Think about the physical flaws we just discussed.
The weird clothes and the waxy skin.
Right. If these entities are struggling to maintain their physical cohesion, or if their disguises are inherently flawed, if their clothes look like plastic and their skin looks like wax daylight is their greatest enemy.
Oh, wow. Yeah, the sun would just expose them immediately.
The harsh scrutiny of the noon sun would instantly reveal their artificiality to anyone watching. Darkness provides an operational theater where human perception is naturally degraded.
We just can't see as well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Our visual acuity drops, our peripheral vision plays tricks on us, and our limbic system is already on edge.
So by striking at night, they hide their physical errors while simultaneously amplifying the vulnerability of the target.
They are isolating you.
Because their primary operational directive is the absolute suppression of truth through profound psychological terror. I mean, they aren't usually showing up to physically assault you, right?
Almost never.
You don't read about WIB pulling weapons or throwing punches. They rely on dire warnings, subtle intimidation, and these highly specific, menacing death threats.
They are the ultimate cold-hearted enforcers of an unknown agenda. They step out from the shadows specifically to silence individuals who have ventured too close to the hidden truths of the paranormal or UFO phenomenon.
So if you see a UFO, they show up to shut you up.
Exactly. They actively seek out human prey to preserve the secrecy of their origins. And because they completely lack the ability to process or simulate human empathy, the witness is left with this feeling of abject dread.
I can't even imagine.
When you look into the eyes of a woman in black, you realize very quickly that you cannot negotiate with this thing. You cannot reason with it.
You can't appeal to its better nature because it doesn't have one.
Right. You cannot plead for your safety because it doesn't understand what safety is.
Which brings up a massive logistical question for me.
Okay, we'll cut.
If they operate primarily at night to exploit our vulnerability and they are trying to intimidate us in our own homes, How exactly do they initiate contact?
Ah, the encounters.
Yeah, because they don't just kick the door down or jump out of the bushes, right? The encounter reports detail these highly ritualized, almost bizarrely polite initiations.
This is where we move from the generalized taxonomy into the actual behavioral scripts they run. When you meticulously deconstruct the anatomy of a standard terrestrial encounter, a pattern emerges that is almost algorithmic.
Algorithmic is the perfect word for it.
It's rigidly structured.
It's like they are executing a computer program line by line, and a massive part of that program revolves around this concept of threshold anxiety.
Yes, the threshold is everything.
We mentioned earlier that they don't rely on physical violence. Instead, they rely on a cold, unyielding persuasion. They arrive at a target's home, usually late at night. They stand on the porch or at the door, and they demand to be let inside.
And crucially, they offer absolutely no logical justification for this request.
None at all.
If a human stranger knocks on your door at 2 in the morning, they usually have a story. They'll say, my car broke down, can I use your phone? Or, I'm with the police, we're canvassing the neighborhood.
They give you a reason to open the door.
Right. The women in black do not do this. They simply state a demand for entry.
It's just, let me in, or I must speak with you inside, over and over.
Monotone and relentless.
And the research argues this isn't just coincidence across isolated cases. It is a rigid structural requirement for their operation. It's a ritualized attempt to cross physical and metaphorical thresholds that we, as humans, instinctively guard.
This is where we see a profound intersection with ancient folklore and demonology.
Oh, this part is so fascinating.
By demanding an explicit invitation to enter a domestic sanctuary, the women in black are precisely mirroring the rules governing vampires and demonic entities.
Like they literally can't come in unless you say yes.
It suggests a profound metaphysical limitation. They are seemingly bound by an invisible, unbreakable law that prevents them from forcefully penetrating a home without the explicit or at least coerced consent of the occupant.
Wait, let's pause there because that is wild to me.
It really reframes the whole encounter.
Are we saying the universe essentially has an operating system and these entities literally do not have the administrative privileges to break down your door?
In a sense.
They possess the power to paralyze you with fear, but they can't turn a brass doorknob unless you say, okay.
That is exactly what the behavioral evidence suggests. They cannot breach the perimeter without your authorization. This is why their tactics center entirely on psychological warfare.
Because that's all they have.
Right. If they could simply phase through the wall or kick the door open to silence a witness, they would. The fact that they stand outside and engage in verbal coercion proves they are restricted by localized rules of engagement.
They have to hack the human instead of the door.
Exactly. They have to trick or terrify you into granting them access, effectively making the human complicit in their own victimization.
Speaking of tricking people, we have to talk about Truman Bethurum.
Oh, the Bethurum case, yes.
The deeper I got into his case study, the more my understanding of this entire phenomenon shifted. It is completely bananas.
The Truman Bethurum case is one of the most revealing examples in the historical record of their highly fluid, manipulative nature.
So who was he, for context?
Bethurum was a prominent contactee in the 1950s. To set the stage, this was a period rich with accounts of people interacting with what they believed were benevolent extraterrestrials.
Right, the classic Space Brothers era.
Exactly.
Post-World War II, the atomic age is dawning, and suddenly people are claiming aliens are visiting to warn us about nuclear weapons. Everything was very cosmic, very enlightening.
It was a very optimistic era of ufology.
Bethurum claimed to have repeated interactions with an entity known as Captain Aura Rains. And initially, she was presented as this beautiful, highly advanced, friendly extraterrestrial from a hidden planet called Clarion.
She was the quintessential space sister.
Flirtatious, benevolent, bringing messages of universal peace.
In the broader context of the 1950s UFO literature, Aura Rains is a famous figure. She represents cosmic enlightenment and maternal guidance. Bethurum wrote extensively about her, and it gained him quite a following.
He wrote a whole book about it, didn't he?
He did. But when you look past the public spectacle and dissect the subsequent, much lesser-known terrestrial encounters Bethurum had with her later on,
oh man, this is where it gets dark.
the relational dynamic shifted in a terrifying way.
The mask completely slipped.
It fell right off.
On these later occasions, she wasn't standing on a spaceship offering cosmic wisdom. She showed up on Earth, unannounced, operating in a definitive woman in black mode.
The friendly demeanor was entirely gone.
The flirtation was gone. She was wearing dark, obscuring disguises, and she was aggressively hostile.
She utilized dire warnings and menacing threats to try and silence Bather, to stop him from talking about specific aspects of his experiences.
It's a drastic, undeniable behavioral inversion.
The entity shifted from an avatar of peace to an agent of suppression.
So I have to ask, are they literal shapeshifters?
That's the big question.
Does a woman in black physically morph into a beautiful space captain, or is the whole friendly space alien thing just a calculated con from the very beginning?
The data leans heavily into the latter, suggesting a deeply manipulative, almost sociopathic agenda by the intelligence behind these encounters.
So it was all a lie.
The benevolent space sister persona is merely an initial, comforting mask. It's utilized to groom the human subject, to placate them, perhaps to observe their psychology up close without triggering their defensive instincts.
It's pure psychological manipulation. Build trust, gather data, maintain control.
Exactly. But when the human subject becomes problematic, perhaps Bathorum was sharing too much information with the public, or perhaps the underlying operational parameters of the intelligence simply changed, that benevolent mask is instantly discarded.
They just dropped the act.
Is replaced by the cold-blooded woman in black enforcer. This duality proves they are highly adaptable psychological warfare agents.
They just project whatever they need to.
They project whatever archetype is necessary to achieve their immediate objectives. If they need to spiritually seduce you to gain your compliance, they are Captain Aura Reigns. If they need to terrify you into absolute silence, they are a bloodless woman in black.
Here's where it gets really interesting.
Okay, let's hear it.
If their physical forms are just adaptable masks, what is the actual intelligence behind them?
The ultimate ontological question.
Right. What are we actually dealing with when one of these things is standing on the porch? Because the ontological theories out there don't just hand you a neat little sci-fi answer.
No, they certainly do not.
They force you to explore a spectrum of origins that aggressively destabilizes how we usually classify the paranormal.
The theories force the researcher, and really, you the listener, to grapple with overlapping realities. On the most accessible mainstream end of the spectrum, we have the traditional extraterrestrial hypothesis.
Aliens.
Right. This is the idea that the women in black are simply alien operatives. They're deployed to silence human witnesses to protect the secrecy of covert planetary visitations, crashed craft, or alien abductions.
Which makes sense on a surface level. It fits the Hollywood narrative. If you have aliens visiting Earth, they need cleanup crew.
It's logical within a nuts and bolts UFO framework.
But the deeper you dig into the literature, the extraterrestrial theory starts to feel too small. It doesn't explain the weird clothes or the bizarre vampire rules.
No, it leaves a lot of loose ends.
So the theories move into way weirder territory, like time travel.
Ah, yes.
And I have to admit, this one blew my mind because it perfectly explains the uncanny valley effect we were talking about earlier.
It is a very elegant solution to the clothing problem.
The idea is that these entities might be temporal agents from different chronologies, like future humans or perhaps humans from alternate timelines.
Right.
They are trying to infiltrate our era, but they struggle to accurately replicate the hyper-specific micro-fashions of our time.
It's a highly compelling explanation for the physical dissonance. Imagine for a moment trying to perfectly replicate the exact fabric blends, the specific stitching techniques, and the stylistic cuts of everyday clothing from the 1890s.
I wouldn't even know where to start.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you'd be basing it only on fragmented historical records or degraded digital archives. Even with immense resources, you would likely get it slightly wrong.
You'd look like you're wearing a costume.
Now imagine a time traveler from 1,000 years in the future attempting to seamlessly blend into a mid-20th century suburban neighborhood,
The clothing looks like a rough, synthesized approximation.
resulting in that uncanny plastic-like texture.
It's brilliant. They know what a fedora or a trench coat looks like in a database, but they don't know how the wool is supposed to drape over shoulder in real gravity.
Exactly.
But even time travel doesn't quite cover the sheer malice of these encounters, which pushes the theories right into theology and the occult.
The darker side of the spectrum.
There are massive connections between the WIB and ancient Islamic concepts of the jinn, or unearthly demonic forces.
The behavioral parallels are simply too significant to ignore here. When you strip away the modern aesthetic of a black sedan and a dark coat, the highly specific behaviors of the women in black remain ancient.
Like what specifically?
Well, the localized cold aura they bring into a room. Their absolute need for a verbal invitation to cross a domestic threshold. Their ability to induce systemic paralysis or metaphysical dread in a witness simply by looking at them.
All the classic demon stuff.
These align perfectly with centuries-old theological descriptions of supernatural entities.
Soul-sucking demons. Corpses animated by a parasitic, non-human force. Under this occult theory, they aren't from another planet.
No, they're native to Earth.
They are from a parallel, lower vibrational dimension right here, and they literally feed on human fear. They show up to terrify you because terror is their fuel source.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, we arrive at what is perhaps the most paradigm-shifting speculation in the entire field of high strangeness. The tulpa, or biorobot hypothesis.
Oh, this is the one.
And this draws incredibly heavily from the revolutionary, often mind-bending theories of the late ufologist John Keel.
Yes. John Keel, I was hoping we would get here.
His work is essential for this topic.
When I was reading about Keel's connection to all this, it was like a light bulb went off. Break down how Keel's framework actually operates, because it completely changes the game.
John Keel popularized the concept of the eighth tower. It's a horrifying yet elegant idea that humanity actually exists within a complex software simulation.
Like the Matrix.
Similar to that, or a broadcasted electromagnetic reality. We are not the masters of our domain. We are completely controlled by an ancient mechanism, a macro-intelligence that exists outside of our perceptual limits.
Just running the show.
And this machine generates anomalous entities on demand.
Okay, so if we accept this simulation framework, that reality is basically a Wi-Fi signal broadcast by a macro-intelligence, what exactly is a woman in black physically? Are they flesh and blood?
Under Keel's theory, no. They are not sovereign biological organisms.
They aren't alive.
They do not have personal agency, memories, or free will. They are tulpas, a Tibetan concept adapted for ufology. They are temporary biochemical robots or localized psychic projections. They are essentially localized glitches or subroutine enforcers spawned momentarily by the macro-intelligence.
So they are like the antivirus software of the universe.
That is a perfect analogy. Their entire purpose is to course-correct the simulated reality.
So how does that work in practice?
Consider a human witness out in the woods who perceives data they were not meant to access. Say, a glowing UFO landing or a cryptid creature.
They saw behind the curtain.
The overarching system registers an error. The witness has seen the code. The integrity of the simulation is threatened.
And the system deploys the women in black to patch the leak.
Yes.
They are dispatched, fully formed from the ether, to intimidate and silence the witness. They execute their program, terrify the human, issue the threat, and then what? How do they leave? They don't, drive back to a base, right?
According to the tulpa theory, once the objective is achieved, they simply dissolve.
They just pop out of existence.
They melt seamlessly back into the background noise of the universe. Their physical mass just ceases to be broadcasted. This perfectly explains why they are so robotic. It explains the absolute lack of emotion, the pale skin, the weird clothes.
Because they aren't real people.
They are artificially constructed agents running on highly limited processing power. The macro-intelligence only gives them enough code to run the intimidate and silence script.
They don't need a backstory.
They don't need a childhood. They don't need a digestive system. They just need to look scary and deliver a threat.
This radically recasts them. They aren't individuals with motivations. They are an automated defense mechanism of reality itself.
Exactly.
But if they are automated subroutines of a simulated reality, that implies they didn't just boot up during the 1950s UFO craze.
No, not at all.
A simulation's defense mechanism would have been running since day one. So where are they in the historical record? Have they always been here?
The historical tracking is where the scope of this phenomenon truly becomes terrifying. The core argument here is that the women in black are an ancient, enduring mechanism operating on the periphery of human civilization since recorded history began.
So they predate the MIB acronym entirely.
Long before we had the acronyms MIB or WOUB, long before the famous Mothman cases of the 1960s, these exact same entities were active in hunting.
When you dig into the history, you find reports of women dressed entirely in black or occasionally in white, depending on the era, that tie back to the earliest investigations of odd phenomena.
The descriptions are remarkably similar.
We're talking about tracking them back to the mythic legends of King Arthur and pre-industrial European folklore.
And this introduces the critical ufological concept of cultural camouflage.
Cultural camouflage.
The underlying intelligence of this phenomenon, that eighth tower macro intelligence, possesses a hyper-awareness of the human psyche. It inherently understands what will be recognized as threatening, authoritative, or monstrous within a specific localized cultural environment.
It's like a computer virus that constantly mutates. It changes its external code to bypass whatever specific antivirus software or belief system a society is currently running. If the society deeply believes in demons and witches, the virus renders an avatar that looks like a demon.
Right.
If the society believes in shadowy government conspiracies and rogue agencies, the virus renders a mysterious Fed in a black suit.
Exactly. The intelligence uses human folklore and religion as a vast, interactive database to dynamically construct its avatars.
So it looks at what we're afraid of and becomes that.
Think about a witness in medieval Europe. If the system needs to silence them, a woman in a 1950s wool coat would make no sense. It would break the simulation further.
They wouldn't be scared, they'd just be confused.
So instead, the witness might encounter a wailing banshee in the dark, a malevolent dark fairy, or a coven of witches knocking on a thatched cottage demanding entry.
But the fear response is the exact same.
The fear response is the same. In the modern bureaucratic era, the exact same intelligence manifests as government-adjacent agents stepping out of vintage black sedans.
The disguise fluctuates wildly based on what year it is and what continent you live on, but the rigid structure underneath remains monolithic.
The core behaviors never change.
They always appear at night, they always have that wrong physical texture, they always issue dire warnings, and they always demand to cross your threshold.
It's the signature of the phenomena.
It proves it's the exact same subroutine running, just wearing a different culturally appropriate skin.
This unyielding transcultural consistency is the strongest piece of evidence we have. It strongly suggests a singular macro-intelligence behind the phenomenon.
It's dynamically rendering these physical avatars based on our own collective evolving nightmares.
Precisely.
And because this macrointelligence is pulling from this shared database of human fears, the women in black are inextricably linked to other famous paranormal entities.
They don't exist in a vacuum.
The sources we're pulling from map out an entire paranormal ecosystem, and the connections are wild.
When you look at the aggregate data, it argues persuasively that these different phenomena, UFOs, cryptids, WIBs, are just distinct extremities belonging to the exact same incomprehensible organism.
Like fingers on the same hand.
The primary focus of this ecosystem is the undeniable historical link between the WIB and the infamous Mothman sightings in Point Pleasant, West Virginia in 1966 and 1967.
Right. For those who aren't familiar, the Mothman flaps were this terrifying period where over 100 people in a small West Virginia town reported seeing a massive winged creature with glowing red eyes.
It caused absolute panic in the region.
It did. But what's less talked about is the massive simultaneous surge in both men in black and women in black activity in the region during those exact same months. But the crucial distinction is that the WIB weren't there for the Mothman.
No, they were not hunting it.
They weren't trying to catch a cryptid.
No, they were entirely reacting to the human witnesses. When humans witnessed the impossible winged entity at the TNT plant, it created a localized disturbance in the fabric of reality.
The glitch we talked about.
The humans saw a glitch. They saw something they weren't supposed to see. The women in black were subsequently dispatched as an emergency containment protocol.
To put a lid on it.
Their job was to seal the psychological breach through localized intimidation.
They are the cleanup crew. The Mothman was the anomaly, the error in the code, and the WIB were the system trying to put the toothpaste back in the tube by terrorizing anyone who talked to the press.
Exactly.
But as crazy as the Mothman connection is, the connection to the black-eyed children is what actually kept me awake last night.
The BEC connection is truly disturbing.
The structural overlap between the women in black and the modern phenomenon of the black-eyed children, or BEC, is profound.
When you strip away the age difference of the avatars, you see that both groups share core operational traits.
I was extremely skeptical of this at first, but let's actually look at the data and run down the list. Both entities strongly prefer to appear at night.
Yes, nocturnal preference.
Both suffer from distinct sartorial anomalies. The black-eyed children are often reported wearing clothes that look slightly wrong, anachronistic, like hoodies that look like they were made in the 1980s but look brand new, or just weirdly manufactured garments.
The AI clothing effect again.
Exactly. And most critically, they utilize the exact same threshold protocols.
Just as the women in black stand at a door issuing cold persuasion, the black-eyed children appear on porches or knock on car windows in dark parking lots with rehearsed robotic lines.
Let us in, we need to use your phone.
Let us in, we are cold. They exhibit an emotionless insistence to be let inside, and they possess that same metaphysical inability to cross the threshold without your explicit permission.
Okay, so I have to ask, are the black-eyed children literally just the women in black utilizing a different skin?
Yeah.
Is the system just swapping the scary government lady avatar for a helpless child avatar to exploit our natural instinct to protect kids?
That is the most logical conclusion based on the behavioral data. These mirrored behaviors act as definitive proof of a shared programmatic origin.
It makes so much sense.
The WIB and the BEC are utilizing the exact same behavioral subroutine. Whatever macrointelligence is deploying the WIB to intimidate adults is simultaneously deploying the BEC to bypass human defenses by weaponizing our nurturing instincts.
Because our defenses are up against a creepy adult.
Right. If a scary woman in black knocks on your door, you might call the police. But if two pale children knock on your door asking for help, you are far more likely to unlock the deadbolt.
We're hardwired to help them.
Both are highly calculated psychological weapons designed to breach human sanctuaries.
That is deeply, deeply unsettling. It's predatory adaptation. The system figures out what works best against you and deploys it. And there's another layer to this camouflage that we have to touch on, which is screen memories.
Screen memories are a fascinating psychological defense mechanism.
How do they work?
The human mind might retroactively alter the appearance of these entities to protect itself from extreme ontological shock.
So we lie to ourselves to stay sane.
In alien abduction lore, entities frequently use oversized owls or other environmental anomalies to mask their true presence. Witnesses report seeing giant, 4-foot-tall owls watching them through a window right before a missing time event.
An owl that big doesn't even make sense.
The owl functions historically in myth as a guardian of thresholds, but here it functions as a neurological screen memory.
So our brain literally paints an owl over the terrifying alien reality because an owl is at least something from Earth.
We can process an owl.
We can't process a multidimensional bio-robot hovering outside our window. And the suggestion here is that the women in black themselves might just be a screen memory.
Yeah, exactly.
A terrifying but still human-shaped mask placed over an intelligence that is entirely incomprehensibly alien.
It suggests a cunning intent to interact with humans while masking a raw reality that our minds would simply shatter upon perceiving.
The WIB is the most terrifying thing your brain can safely render without breaking.
Right. It's the limit of what you can process.
Which brings us to a massive inherent risk. Understanding these complex connections, digging into this ecosystem, it is dangerous. The more I read about this, the more I felt like I was being watched.
It's a common feeling among researchers.
Because a central tenet of this research is that the phenomenon knows when you are looking at it.
The observer effect, as it applies to high strangeness, is perhaps the most dangerous aspect of this entire field. This is a terrifying, unwritten rule of engagement within ufology.
And what is that rule?
When you start digging into the phenomenon actively takes notice of you. It is not a passive subject of study.
It pushes back.
It absolutely pushes back.
There are endless documented cases where researchers who attempt to follow up on UFO flaps or cryptid sightings frequently begin to experience weird anomalies in their own personal lives.
Phones acting strange, dark figures seen at the edge of their property.
Sudden, intense bouts of bad luck or illness.
The women in black operate as the aggressive immune system of the paranormal world. They're specifically deployed to target investigators.
They hunt the people hunting them.
Their goal is to hunt these researchers by night, to isolate them, and to utilize a brand of psychological warfare that makes the victim question their own sanity.
Think about the mechanics of that. They want to make you look crazy so no one believes your research.
It's a very effective tactic.
If you go to the police and say, a pale woman with no blood and a weird dress threatened me telepathically, you instantly discredit all your own hard work.
You become the crazy UFO person.
They act as a hostile pushback. The simple act of observing the phenomenon is treated as an act of aggression by the intelligence behind it. And it's not just the entities themselves that drive researchers mad. It's the labyrinth of evidence they leave behind.
The documentary Maze is a profound tool of suppression. Investigating the women in black means navigating thousands of pages of mixed provenance.
It's a complete mess.
You have legitimate Freedom of Information Act, or FOIA, returns and actual intelligence correspondence mixed seamlessly with unverifiable personal notes, garbled chatter, and obvious blatant fabrications.
It's an informational nightmare. How do you know what's real when a supposed government document about a UFO crash is sitting right next to a letter that looks like it was typed by a crazy person?
You don't, that's the point.
The intelligence community, whether intentionally or accidentally, has created a mountain of material that intentionally blurs the line between sterile bureaucratic records and living myth.
This raises an important question regarding the government's role in all of this.
Are they in on it?
Whether intentional or accidental, the mixing of real and fake documents creates a permanent feedback loop of paranoia and pattern recognition within the UFO community. Researchers spend decades chasing shadows.
And the women in black absolutely thrive in this shadow zone. If you are a researcher, you are forced to navigate this endless maze of disinformation.
You can never reach a definitive empirical conclusion because the data is intentionally corrupted.
The entities ensure the ultimate secret remains intact by turning the investigation itself into a form of madness. You get trapped in a web of your own digging, constantly stalked by the very things you were trying to prove exist.
It's a perfect defense mechanism.
It completely neutralizes the threat of discovery. If the researcher is consumed by paranoia, isolated from their peers, and discredited by fake documents, the macrointelligence wins.
The simulation remains secure, and the truth stays hidden.
So what does this all mean? As we step back and look at the entirety of this research, the synthesis is that the women in black are the ultimate sentinels of the unexplained.
They really are.
They aren't just weird people in sheep suits. They are a dark mirror reflecting humanity's perpetual vulnerability. They show us how fragile our dominion is over our own homes, our own locks, and even our own minds.
While we may lack the empirical scientific proof to put one of these entities under a microscope, and perhaps we never will given their nature, their enduring transcultural presence proves something profound.
What does it prove to you?
It proves that there is a mechanism at work in the universe that actively guards its secrets. Some doors in the universe are fiercely guarded, and opening them invites a visit from the dark.
That is a chilling thought. But before we leave you today, I want you to consider one final thing based on the logic we've just unpacked.
Okay.
We talked extensively about cultural camouflage, this idea that our collective human culture dictates the terrifying forms these entities take. They scan our cultural database and render an avatar we will fear.
Right, the banshees, the government agents.
In the Middle Ages, it was witches at the edge of the forest. In the Cold War, it was shadowy government agents in vintage cars. So if that is true, if they are constantly updating their software, what entirely new, unimaginable nightmare avatar are we currently unconsciously programming for them right now in our modern, hyper-digital, AI-driven age?
A fascinating and truly terrifying question.
What shape will the knock at the door take tomorrow?
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep your doors locked, but more importantly, keep questioning the shadows. We'll see you next time.